Hey, how's it going everybody? It's Bro here, hope you're doing well, and in this video I'm going to teach you guys about arrays in C++, and at the end of this video we're going to work on a project where we can assign some names of cars and then place them all within an array, and then we're going to take this array, display all the values into some sort of virtual garage, kind of like this. Pretty cool, right? Let's get into it. Before you reach the end of this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that we together can challenge and defeat the mighty YouTube algorithm. All an array is that it's a variable that can store multiple values. So for example, I have a string variable named car, and it's storing a single string with the word Corvette. Now we can actually turn this into an array by following a few simple steps. So let's say that we want to add multiple car names to this variable. Well, we'll want to turn this into an array then. So the first step is that next to the variable name, add a set of straight brackets, and then all values that we want to assign to this array, we're going to surround with a set of curly braces. All right, so this is our first value. If we want to add a second value, we're going to separate each value with a comma, and then we can add maybe another car name. So think of this maybe like a parking lot or a garage. We're adding multiple cars to this array, and they're each going to take up one spot. So for the second car name, I think I will assign a Tesla, and the third, how about a Ferrari? All right, and then with the name of the array, you should pick a name that reflects the values that it's storing. So before we had a single variable named car, so I think I'll turn this into cars because it's plural now. So there we go, we have just made an array. Now there's one limitation with arrays. All the values that are assigned to this array have to be of the same data type. So for example, I couldn't mix an array with different data types. Like for example, let's get rid of this Ferrari and just add in the number 2021, like a year. Well, this would actually not work because we're mixing different data types. This is an integer and these are strings. So we have to be sure that we're only adding values of the same data type, although we could add the string representation of the number 2021. This would technically work. Maybe we could change this to years, and we'll make this an array of integer values. So let's start adding some numbers. So like maybe 2020, 2021, and 2022. So this would work the same as well. With arrays, you have to make sure that all values are of the same data type. Now let's head back to our previous example of our array named cars. Now pay attention to what happens if I attempt to display this array named cars. All right, so take a look at this. We get this address, and you probably learned about this on the lesson on pointers. This is where this array is storing these values at this address. So if you want to display one of these values that's located in this array, you actually have to label the element. So what you want to do is that when you want to display one of these values, type in the name of the array, then that set of straight brackets, and then you're going to put the element number of the value that you want to retrieve. And if you want to retrieve, let's say, this first value, you're actually going to type 0. It's a computer science thing. Arrays always start at 0, and the next position would be 1, and then 2, and then you continue in that pattern. So if we want to display this word Corvette, or retrieve whatever is at this element, element number 0, we're going to type in the name of the array, followed by a set of straight brackets, and then the element number, which in this case is 0. So let's see what happens now. And it displays our first value, which is Corvette. So now let's say we want to display this second value. We're going to enter in element number 1 within the set of straight brackets. Let's run this just to test it. Yep, that's right. We have a Tesla in spot number 2, also known as element number 1. And then let's do the same thing with our last element here. So that is index number 2 or element number 2, and that has a Ferrari. Now, what happens if we attempt to retrieve an element that doesn't exist within our array? So let's say 3. So we don't have an element 3, we have element 0, 1, and 2. And this results in a problem. So an exception was thrown. It'll say something such as index out of bounds, and if we added another element to this array, we actually wouldn't have that problem then, so I think I'll add an Audi this time. And then let's display this. Yep. Oh, and another thing, with these arrays, you can always update these values. So let's say that we want to change that last element, element number 3. We're going to say cars, straight brackets, 3, equals, and then we can pick a new value. So maybe I'll place I don't know. I like Mustangs. Let's put a Mustang in there. And then let's display this again. So cars, 3, equals, Mustang. Yep, it's right there. Let's say that you want to display all the values in this array. Let me show you what you don't want to do. So what you don't want to do is simply just to see out all of these manually by hand. So for example, I'll just copy and paste this see out a few times. So if we want to display the first element, that is element number 0. The second one is 1, 2, and then 3. All right. So this would actually display all of them. But it's probably not the best programming practice to actually display all these. Let me show you a better method to display all the elements of an array using a for loop then. So let's start over fresh, but we'll keep our array of cars. So the first thing that we're going to do is create a for loop. So we're going to type for, then a set of parentheses, and then let's add a set of curly braces. Now there's 3 different statements that we're going to fill out within the parentheses of the for loop. We'll need some sort of index, so we'll say int I and set this equal to 0, then a semicolon to move on to the next statement. The second statement in our for loop is for our condition. How many times do we want this for loop to repeat and cycle? Well, we want this for loop to repeat for as many elements there are in our array of cars. So one way to write this is that our condition is going to be I is less than size, then a set of parentheses, and within the parentheses, we're going to type in our array name of cars. And then we're going to add a semicolon to move on to the next statement. So this is dynamic. So if we were to increase the amount of elements that are within our array, we wouldn't need to manually adjust how many times this for loop is going to repeat. When we compile this program, this number might update depending on whatever the current amount of elements is within our array. So we could freely add or remove elements without worrying about our for loop working or not. This is going to adjust. So for the third statement, we're just going to increment our counter. So we could just type in I plus plus. So now this for loop is going to repeat for as many elements there are in our array. So let's say that we want to display each of these elements now. So before, what we did is that we just typed in cout and then the name of our array, straight brackets, and then we put a number in here. So if we wanted the first element, that was element number 0, this would display the first element. Then the second one would be 1, 2, 3, so we would continue on like that. So what we're going to do within this for loop is actually put our index of I. So I is currently set to 0. So when we reach this part of the for loop, it's going to read cars at index I as in 0. And the second time that we cycle through this for loop, I is going to increment with this statement, and I is now 1, and it's going to continue after each cycle. So I'm just going to add an end line, and let's try this out now. All right, here is our array of cars then that we made. Let's try another example of this just so that we really have the fundamentals down of arrays. So I'm going to create another array of a different data type. So for cars, I'm just going to comment this out for now, and let's create a new array, maybe years. So let's make this of the integer data type. We're going to come up with a unique name for this array that reflects the values that it stores. So years, then a set of straight brackets, equals, and then we're going to add a bunch of values between this set of curly braces, and I'm just going to make up some years. So maybe 2021, 2022, 2000, 1999, 1842. All right, and then for our for loop, we're just going to change the word cars to years. So here and here. And let's try this. Yeah, that looks about right. We have 5 elements within this array called years, and they're all displayed here. Well, that's the very basics of arrays. I'll post this code in the comments down below. If you would like to take it a step further, I'm going to show you some more advanced stuff involving arrays. What we're going to do is dynamically allocate an array after the compilation phase by using a pointer. Don't worry, I'll walk you through it. So we will be able to ask the user for the size of an array and then have the user assign values to it. So we're actually going to make a project. We'll ask the user how many cars they have, and we're going to park each of their cars into an array. Think of it like a garage, and each element has a parking spot number. So if you want to continue, let's take it to level 2. Alright, well, if you're ready for some more advanced stuff, we're going to create a program that's going to ask the user how many cars they have. They're going to enter in some names of these cars, and we're going to put them all within an array that's going to function like a garage. And at the end, we're actually going to display all the cars that are within our garage, all the elements in our array. The first thing that we're going to do is to create an integer variable, and let's call this number. We're not going to assign this a value quite yet. We're only going to declare it because we're going to have the user type in a number for the number of cars that they have. So we're going to see out how many cars do you have? And then let's see in their response, and we'll store that within our variable number. This number is going to reflect how many cars they have, and this is going to function as the size of our array. Now, this is the tricky part. We're going to create a pointer for our array because we don't know how much space we need to allocate before the program actually compiles. So these are the steps. We're going to create a variable of strings. So we're going to type string, then we need to use the dereference operator, and we're going to create a pointer. So a common naming convention is to type in p lowercase and the name of the variable or the array, and the first letter is uppercase. So if this array is going to be named cars, we can just type in cars here with a capital C, equals new, then the data type that we're working with. So it's an array of strings, so we're going to type in string, a set of straight brackets. Okay, so then within the straight brackets, this is the amount of space that we want to give this array. We don't know how much space we're going to allocate. It's going to depend on this number. So if you were to type in 10, this would allocate 10 spaces. 5 would give 5 spaces. We're going to put in our variable number within here, and then add a semicolon at the end. So this is our pointer, pcars, for our array. All right? Pcars is a pointer that's storing the address of our array, and when we assign values to this, we're sending values to whatever address is stored within our pointer. Now, we're going to create a for loop that's going to repeatedly ask the user for each name of each car they have for as many times as the number that they typed in. So let's create a for loop. So for, a set of parentheses, and then a set of curly braces. There's 3 statements to fill out within the for loop. We'll need some sort of counter or index. We can declare that within here, int I, and let's set this equal to 0, semicolon. The next statement is our condition. We could easily just say, we'll continue this for loop as long as I is less than whatever the number the user types in, semicolon. And then we're going to increment our counter by 1. Within the for loop, we're going to create a prompt for the user to enter in the name of each car that they have. So let's see out some sort of message. Enter car number, and then we will put the value or the index of I here. Now, one problem though, right now during our first iteration of the for loop, I is going to be 0, and if some user doesn't know any programming, and they probably won't, they'll be confused when it says enter car number 0. Like, what does that mean? So what we can do to actually offset the display for our index is just say I plus 1. All right, so this won't actually affect the value of 1. It's going to affect how it's displayed, though, to the user. So I is still going to be 0, but when it's displayed, it's going to be displayed as 1. So if somebody's using this program and it says enter car number 1, that actually makes sense. Before we had enter car number 0, where that probably wouldn't. We understand what it means, but the user might not. So we're going to say enter car number I plus 1. And then let's add a semicolon. And then we're going to cin. Actually, let's get line because some car names might have some spaces between them. So get line, cin, then comma. And then what we're going to type in here is the pointer that we made. So p cars at a specific index. So then we need a set of straight brackets. And then we're going to put our index or counter I within here. And then just add a semicolon at the end. Now with this for loop, it's going to have the user enter in a value for each car that they have, and it's going to assign this value at wherever this array is located, at wherever the pointer is pointing to, which is where our array is located. Now let's create some sort of graphical display to actually display all this information. So maybe we'll just make a cout message such as, here is your garage. And then maybe I'll create a new line after this, maybe before this as well, just to make it look nice. Maybe let's add like some sort of line here too. Then I'll create a new line. Okay, I think that's fine. And for this last step, all we need to do is to create another for loop that will display all the elements of this array this time. And honestly, we can just copy what we have here and simply paste it and make a few changes. All we need to do is to change the contents of this for loop. We can leave all of this the same then. So let's create some sort of display for each line. So maybe cout, maybe let's type in parking spot number. You don't have to do this exactly as I do. You can create your own sort of display. Parking spot number, maybe I, or you could do I plus 1. I think I'll do I plus 1. You could have a parking spot number 0 if it's like a VIP parking spot or something. Do what you want to do. So parking spot number 1, and then I think I'll add a space, and then I will display the element of each array. So if you want to do that, we're just going to type in p cars, straight brackets, and then our index, then semicolon. Oh, before we actually do run this, there's a few housekeeping things I'm going to add real quick. I forgot to end the line after this, and I'm also going to add a space after the number to make it look better. I'm kind of doing this on the fly, so the syntax isn't going to be perfect. All right, we should be good then. So there's one thing you're going to notice when we run this, and it's going to be fairly evident at first. All right, so how many cars do you have? Let's say 4, and then hit enter. All right, so you'll notice that it says enter car number 1, and then immediately it goes to enter car number 2. And this is the reason why. It actually skipped the first prompt for car number 1, and that's because when we typed in 4 and hit enter, well, cin picked up the 4, but when we hit enter, that's still within the buffer, and we need to get rid of that, because then when we used the getLine function here, it actually took the new line character and entered it into the first line of our array. So what we can do is actually clear the buffer. And what we'll do is after we type in cin number, we're just going to type in cin, ignore, and then just add a semicolon. So then that should clear the buffer then. So that's just one thing you might run into, and I wanted to point that out. Okay, now we should be good to go. All right, how many cars do you have? I have 4 cars. Enter car number 1. Let's say I have a Lamborghini. I don't know how to spell Lamborghini. I'll just type in Lambo. Car number 2, maybe a Tesla. Number 3, maybe an Audi. And number 4, perhaps a Jeep. Alright, here is your garage, and here are the 4 cars that we have. They're all within our garage, and that is basically how you can create a program to dynamically ask for the size of an array and assign values to it to display. If you would like a copy of this program, I'll post all of this code in the comments down below. And if you're looking for additional practice, then why don't you create a program that involves an array and post it in the comments down below if you'd like to share it. But yeah, that's everything you need to know to get started with arrays in C++. Hey you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. If you learned something new, then you can help me help you in 3 easy steps by smashing that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe if you'd like to become a fellow bro.